welcome back to this last session of this conference with a feel-good talk about Kubernetes security.
Yep.
So, and you're also the third Portuguese speaker today.
We are invading again, right? That's nice.
Yeah, but it's unusual for Austria. And but you live in London.
Newcastle.
Oh, sorry, Newcastle. You came here from the UK, and you work for Control Plane
Exactly.
as a consultant for security.
A security engineering manager. I'm not so smart to be a consultant, to be fair.
All right. Well, now I'm really looking forward what a feel-good security talk is. Let's give it up for Marcos Tenorio.
I will try to do one thing I will try to do without speaker notes, just because I like to be hard. So, my name is Marcus, ich heiße Marcus. It's the only thing I know in German. It's a pleasure to be here. It's strange to talk about a feel-good talk in security, but let's try to give a go. I'm sponsored by Control Plane, as we have the sponsor for KCD Austria. They are paying me for my trip, we are hiring, and then we got this nice thing of conference days and training days. That's why I am here today. And then I look like that sometimes, right? You get a bug, you don't know who you are. But my name is Marcos, and I am from Campina Grande, Paraíba. That's a really small town no Nordeste do Brasil, or the northeast of Brazil. And then I came a long way, and I remember like, oh, we have this thing that's the big St. John's party in the world, but that's a kind of a strange thing for us Brazilians, right? Because the only place that got St. John's parties is in Brazil. So how do you have the biggest in the world? It's like NBA, I think. And then every single time when I was studying, I live really near to this thing, is a 30-day party, which don't make sense. And then the guys was screaming like, Boa noite no Parque do Povo. So I want to say, in my really bad German, Guten Abend, Volkspark, to start this talk. Going forward, I did move to Newcastle 3 years ago. I'm living there. Sometimes it's a little bit gray, but people are lovely. My English is quite a bit strange because I have some things like the George say. George is a dialect from the northeast of England, and I find quite amazing because they say like Kenny. Kenny was a thing like good, so I hope it will be a Kenny talk. And going forward, okay, I work, right? That's why I'm here. I am a security engineering manager. As I was saying, I'm not so smart to be a consultant. Has been working in the cybersecurity space for the last 10 years, which makes me feel old. I did start to use Kubernetes with OpenStack, which is quite strange and so long ago. And then I got in this cloud-native world. I was working in e-commerce, doing incident manager, working on call. I miss on call. My wife hates when I say that I miss on call, but it was nice for the adrenaline. And then that's a feel-good talk, right? If you know threat modeling, we have 5 things here. Who, what, where, why, and when. What? This is attribute. That's a feel-good talk. So the main idea is to say, how is the main things that make Kubernetes harder than you think? How is the main things that help security? And why security is a good thing, not bad people in hoodies and so on. Where, here in KCD Austria, or someone is seeing that video in the future and I really will hate my voice because I find my voice quite strange when I'm recording. Why? Because these people here set me. So if you are a threat, that's their fault, not my fault. And when, right now, or if you are doing the painful thing this video, sorry for that, it's online. Okay, so that was me trying to be funny. I'm quite happy because my mother don't understand English, but my father does, so we quite sad because they see. But going back to going back to Kubernetes, right? I think the main idea of Kubernetes was how do we evolve, right? So what I want to show here is how we come from the really basic thing and go to the app, and can show that Kubernetes is harder than you think. From getting off in the early 2014, to have things like RBAC, secret by design. We are talking about zero trust and other cool stuff. So it was a long way here, as my way from Brazil to Austria, but then we are coming doing that together. Cool, but before talk about Kubernetes, let's talk about CVEs. Let's talk a little bit about security. I love standards and I love graphic design. The main thing is CVEs stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, right? So you have this standard that works with companies and with institutions and foundations to understand what's a vulnerability. How do you improve for that? And pretty much, how do you make your products harder? And then, okay, how can I build this talk? When I was trying to build this talk, I saw one guy that some people know in security called Hori, doing a quite similar talk in KCD UK. I didn't panic. I'm like, okay, I'm not that smart. So how can you do one thing different? And my idea was, how you play with data. I will get CVEs, I will get Kubernetes, and see if it's good. And there's a first lesson. The community is really great. I did send an email to Hori. Oh, I desperate. This makes sense. Like, yeah, I'm going to do something quite different for KCD UK, so follow that way, you'll be kind of nice. And then, I love the post, right? I love the conference. The main thing I like here is, if you look for Kubernetes 10 years in security, you're going to have a post for cloud native security. So why are you doing that today? Why is different? I got this thing of going a rabbit hole. I was like changing the slides every single day. So I did finish the slides 1 hour ago. And it was pretty much, okay, I can talk about the talks, right? I can think. If I can say about things about other people, if the talk was bad, it was not my talk was bad. But then you got things here about eBPF and security. You got things about securing your clusters and so on. So you see that security is one thing that people are talking about, people are liking, and pretty much it's in everywhere. Now we have eBPF on cars. I was not expecting that. But pretty much, how did I put this data together? How I do that? It was a good feeling, or was kind of that image, like, oh, I want to throw a lot of things and see what happens. It was not quite like that. I did use DataCat. We have Datadog. I did use DataCat, and I did try to use AI. The main thing here is using AI was really, 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 really painful. I think that was easy. But for some reason, when I put the CVEs, ChatGPT and cloud was calculated 4 plus 4 plus 4 was 10. I was like, ugh. And then I did start to do my scripts by hand and understand that you cannot trust AI all the time, but we're going to talk about AI a little bit in the future. The other thing here is all the examples come from 3 bases, right? So if you have the community, if you have the energy, if you have everything, why on earth are you going to start again? Why are you going to reinvent the wheel? So what we did was pretty much get these sources. First thing, quite amazing, is the love for the community, right? You have the feed of CVs from Kubernetes. So okay, let's start from there. Second thing, everybody who works with security, no military company, you got this amount of CVs. And third thing that was not so nice was NIST. NIST is nice as a database, but the way to interact with the API and the way they format the data is not a good thing. So I was like, okay, I have this amount. I think, I will not look at the slides, I will say by head. I think we have 60 for Kubernetes CVE feed. I think we have 296 for NIST, and then we have 320 for military. Yes! And then the main thing was like, how I can use this data if they're quite strange? And the first question that goes to your mind is, why they are so different, right? Why you have 3 bases that talk about the same stuff, and they are so different between each other? And then make some questions. First thing, the CVF feed only talks about vulnerabilities for Kubernetes. Kubernetes is really big, right? You got a lot of projects and so on. And then when you put on the search for NIST and military, you got everything that the Kubernetes word appears there. So everything appears by Kubernetes. Okay, so how I can improve that? The main thing is, I love sets. I love intersections. So I did one script, because the script that I asked ChatGPT to build was broken. I did one script, get the intersection of 55 vulnerabilities that is in the 3 databases. Nice. But why I put in this really thing on the first cycle, right? I think the most important thing is, before 2017, there was not a Kubernetes official CVF feed. So if I'm talking about security in Kubernetes in the last 10 years, I need to go back until 2014. So I think that was really a nice idea. It was really like Steve, that was Rockcom. So we have another quick data takeaway here. I think the most important thing, is how to use this data, how do we show that's important, how do we show things that we can learn for this one. And please, do not leave this room. I'll be really sad if you do that. But we're going to talk about data insights in the end of this talk in a lot of slides in the front. But I really like the offensive security mindset. For some reason in my career, I was looking to work with a lot of head teamers, and then I need to learn, right, because they are really smart. And the main thing is not about you are the hacker, you are breaking. The best people I met in my career that know about offensive security was not head teamers. Was people who work as software engineers who understand what's the importance of trying to break things. We say one thing that to be an engineer, to be a cloud-native person, you need to try to understand why things work. And that's pretty much the same mindset of a security engineer, right? How do you break things and how do you make it better? Not breaking just to the sake of break. And that's what happened, right? In 2018, we have the first really critical CVE for Kubernetes. And this comes from a bug, not for somebody trying to exploit. And then when Jennifer Google was working like, oh, I think I can evolve that and find a CVE. So that was the first critical CVE. And was nobody doing that just I had a team or because I want to break stuff, but how do I improve? So comes one thing that is security. We say that a lot, but it's part of the life cycle of code. So when you integrate security as a part of software, it's quite amazing. And I have in this really hot take that security will be absorbed by dev in the future, You got this thing with QA, and we talk about DevSecOps. I really think that the more that you know about software engineer, the best you can do about security, right? And then I know that sometime in the past, there's a lot of slides. I start to change slides. But we start our traveling history, right? We're going to talk about 10 years of Kubernetes. So let's go 10 years in the past. Let's move and think about 2014. If you are Brazilian, what is the first thing that comes to your mind from 2014? 7.1. Yeah, it was sad. I was with my wife. She was like, oh, go do some popcorn. And then Brazil took 3 goals. It was bizarre, but that happens in life, right? But then we go back to 2014. If you don't know, and I think most people here know, Kubernetes comes from Borg. Borg was one internal, is still used in Google, an internal project for Google, and they're like, oh, we can put that in community, we can involve, right? But in the moment that you put one thing in the wild, you don't have the all features that you need. You don't have the whole things that you think in the future, like how do I protect against that? So it was wild, was really wild. We don't get whole-based access control. We don't get a lot of authentication authorization. We don't get network policies. Think how you work with security in Kubernetes today, and think how bizarre it was 10 years ago. So on moving that way, we have our first CVE. I will try to do one thing that talks pretty much. We have the CVE, we have some takeaways, we have some AI-generated speech, and then we try to understand what's happening. So the first CVE was 2015. It's kind of strange that bit because confused a little bit with Docker, and then if you see your bases, you find as a Docker and Kubernetes vulnerability. But the main important thing here was this really bizarre takeaway of ChatGPT. Okay, because nobody was thinking about security at that time. I was like, I don't quite like that. It's a meh statement. What's meh? Like, meh. But the main thing is, we talk about security by design. We talk about how to evolve. But I like to think that security is like lottery. If you know the numbers of the lottery, you're going to play right now, you're going to lose a lot of money, and pretty much you'll be in Brazil again. But the main stuff is, you don't know everything that you will take in the future. You don't know every single fight that you do that. So that statement is quite of meh, because you only improve one thing when you need to improve, right? If everybody here, or anybody here, sorry, did take ICP or the whole thing of try harder, or fail better, right? So as you're evolving, you are finding new things, you are evolving the whole bit. So talking about that CV specific, I didn't understand one thing. It was a vulnerability in the Kubernetes API, unauthorized access. Pretty much Airbag will solve that one, but we don't have Airbag at the time. The root cause was lack of proper authentication and authorization. And this was amazing, right? You remember that guy that found the first critical vulnerability in Kubernetes in 2018? He was the same guy who found that vulnerability in 2015. So you see how much effort he was putting in the community and how much he was evolving. 3 years later, he was still doing things to improve Kubernetes. It was not only him, right? We have a lot of people who work CIS benchmarks. We have people think about security. We have groups. We have this thing with how do we improve security as open source community members. And then, if you don't not break the thing, you don't have the ideally of fail. And going back to the talking the same stage yesterday at midday of failing successfully. I think that's the most important thing here, right? So we did fail, we did find this problem, we find the root case, we improve. So that's the important thing of how do we keep improving, how do we keep improving. And then, it's a little bit taste, right? That was our patient zero of first vulnerability. But one thing that I want to do here today is, okay, how Kubernetes keep evolving after that. Let's talk about 4 things. RBAC, network policies, ingress, and encryption at rest. And disclaimer, right? I did talk that like 5 or 6 times now. Oops. It's pretty much security evolve side by side with the software lifecycle. You cannot improve security without improving your software. And I'm talking security here, thinking just about security in code, not thinking security in systems, then hardware. So we need to understand that as you're evolving your idea of software, you are evolving security side by side. That's our back, right? I think everybody knows a little bit about that. It's pretty much whole-based access control, and now I'm gonna need my speak notes. But going back, it's the foundational base of security, right? Because trying to be really simple, you need to understand who can do what. If you think about threat model, if you think about stuff, it's quite amazing. One thing jumping to the future, when you think about RBAC, you think about people. Oh, I got this software engineer, whole one, I got this test engineer. but nobody think about software. If you do a pen test in Kubernetes, which will be the first hole that you look right now? An idea? Okay, CI/CD. Because everybody thinks my CI/CD pipeline can do everything. So they put a lot of permissions in CI/CD. So the main idea here is how do you look these things and how do you evolve? That's a quick review of my main idea. I really like the idea of these slides survive me. So after this talk, if you don't want to hear my voice, these slides will be this mobile. I want to have a cheat sheet to CKA, CKS. There's some things here that you show. And there's a timeline, right? If you think, we did talk about Kubernetes in 2014, but we start to talk about it back in January of 2016, and that's only became stable in 2017 in September. It's not easy to update software, right? Because unless you have a critical problem, log4j, everybody was living that, or something like that, you need to go to the whole flow and make sense that solving one problem, not creating other. My wife loves to say that and really like that quote. If you are solving one problem and create one or more other problems, you are just putting the things to other person to solve. And then think about our back, there's two relevant CVs I want to talk today. The first one is that one here from 2015. That was the classical one that I talk about authorization, 2016, sorry, about authorization and authentication as well. And then how this would help. If you make your surface attack smaller because you have the right roles, you will be more safe. We will not sort out everything, but we will help a little bit. And the second one is that one for 2019. That's pretty much, if you have one permission, you can modify other things. So sometimes you consider that people are not doing security in the correct way. What is quite important? Because there's a hot takeaway today. If you are doing perfect security, everybody will hate you and your code will not work. We'll talk about that. So you can give access to everybody and then they sort it out, right? So that go back to our problem. The main idea and the main takeaway of our back was, if I put everybody to access only what they need, least privilege, this will be enough to help. And then we got network policies. Network policy is quite funny, right? It's like the policy itself. You think and you create rules that will help your software to work, and you'll say like, this pod, this little small thing, this cluster can only access the things that they need to access. They only can talk with the pods that they need to talk. And why this is quite important? Because if you think about incidents, and pretty much one thing that we never like to think, but it's quite important, and in two talks yesterday, people talk about that, is internal threats. If you did work with a red team and you have one of your red teamers going rogue, that's kind of a problem. Or if you have your software engineer going rogue, that's a bigger problem, right? But if you change the scope of his work, if you put the things in place, this really helps because you can understand what they are doing, if you have the logs, and why they are doing that thing. Again, key features, I'm going to move because that's almost on the end of the time, and I think that's the most important thing, right? What I want to show to you guys today, folks, is pretty much how this feature in native Kubernetes, somebody can say in the audience, like, oh, but we got this whole another things in CNCF that help security. The focus here is only things inside of the core Kubernetes. So how network policies can help against the kind of CV? Pretty much, if you configure it really well and you think about your borders and your scope, will help you to not have a problem in the future. Ingress is quite nice. I'll be quite fast with Ingress, but it's pretty much, if I use a network policies to protect my pods, my internal communication between pods and external, how do I think about the outside world? And that's Ingress. I think the most important thing about Ingress is that slide here. Because when I talk about network policies, when I talk about our back, I say like, oh, how this will evolve and how this will help against that vulnerability. The main idea with Ingress is different, right? We got Ingress, and then we got a CVE, we got a problem. So that bit helped us to sort it out. So the whole component is evolving and being better to solve. And then we got encryption at rest. I love the idea of encryption. Prime numbers in this thing was the main idea that put me in cybersecurity. I like a tale from Greek that you got this guy, and then you write a code in his shaved head, and then he runs until Sparta, and nobody will know because the hair will grow. This will not be great with me right now, but in the past was nice because you can protect the information. Stretch a little bit, we can use that as a first example of encryption. Encryption by itself will not solve any of security problems, right? It's not encryption thing and you evade the attack. But if someone have access to your etcd, if someone have access to some really sensitive data, encryption at rest will protect you. And when you think about things like GDPR or certifications, you need to have all your data encryption at rest and encryption at trusted. So encryption is quite simple. It's one of the most important and basic use of cybersecurity for the all time. And it's quite nice to show because we did not get this thing in Kubernetes until 2017. So you see the things evolving, you see the things moving, you see like, okay, we are became a more safer product. And then, I really like that one here, right? Let me just jump the CV because of the time. But most of the time, it's not about having the thing you use it, right? It's pretty much, you have the feature, and you choose to not use it, right? You have RBAC, but you choose to put like all the permissions in one row. You have encryption at rest, but you not do that because you don't like to see the keys going in and out. So the feature will not protect you. But then we have this really quick slide, right? If you look about all the 4 features that we showed today, they talk about the same thing. It's quite boring, right? We need to understand who wants to access what. We need to understand why people want to do that, and we need to protect all data that is there. And that's simple. That's the main thing about security. We don't do the basics right? I think that's go to a lot of things in the life. We do not eat well because we don't want to study that. We do not do exercise because sometimes we're too busy. But the main thing is, you have this lot of things, and everything goes back to a threat model. If you can understand your system, the problems there, you can evolve that system. But threat model is a continuous thing, right? There's a really nice threat model from Kubernetes from 2019 from Trail of Bits. It's open, of course. But then it's a nice thing to read because you understand how far we did move in only 5 years. There's a lot more, right? There's a etcd, there is a lot of things more of security. I just want to give a little bit of, that's the security, that's why you do that. So I did talk a lot of slides ago about data analysis. Run a little bit more, there's 3 nice things. The first one is the distribution of the vulnerabilities, right? If you did work with web page pen testing or other kind of pen testing, that's the most thing that happens with all the systems. So we are not creating new vulnerabilities and new things from Kubernetes because we want people to understand and use the system. So you need to keep the same standard. You need to keep the same dictionary. You need to keep the same word. So if you look, privilege escalation is a thing there's a lot in a lot of the systems. It was the first vulnerability in Kubernetes. It will be a lot more happening. But it's pretty much, you can see the insides. You can see the things moving around the same stuff. That's one quite of nice. That was the percentage of critical, high, medium, and low. We got CVEs. Every CVE got a CVSS. That is the score of that vulnerability. The higher, the worst. So we don't have a lot of criticals, but we have a lot of high in Kubernetes. Why? Because we are processing data. You have a lot of things there. And pretty much, you can do a privilege escalation, as we did see in that vulnerability. It's quite easy. But I really like that one. So, Marcus, you're telling to me, oh, Kubernetes is getting more harder, it's getting better. Why on earth the vulnerabilities keeping rising and rising? And I love that. I used to work in an e-commerce platform, and then there was one team. That team every time got 50, 60 vulnerabilities. It was like, dude, the guys are too good. Why they have this? Because they have idea to put an engineer full-time to search for vulnerabilities. So all the other teams don't got nothing because we don't see. So it's quite funny. And the main thing here is, as Kubernetes is used by everybody, like we have this amount of conference, we have people putting there, you have a lot of different products based on Kubernetes, more things will appear because more people look at that. It's quite simple. If you try to search for vulnerabilities in really specific products, will not exist. Not because they are safe, just because people are not looking. And I think the future is quite amazing, right? We did talk a lot about multi-cloud here, and I think the future of Kubernetes security start to think about this now edge cases. But I'm certain that in like 5 years, we're going to be talking here about these things and understand that was the same stuff because people are evolving, and this became rice and beans, as we say in Brazil, because security evolves, and then we got this thing of taking for granted, right? If you look at the slides today, I did talk about RBAC. I think nobody can think in a system without RBAC right now, but then we take for granted because we think that was always there. And then we have AI coming. I really love the idea, the discussion about AI. I quite pissed off AI today, but let's get that away. But the main thing is AI will change the way we do code. And it's quite funny, because if you think about machine learning, SecOps, and other things, AI was here for a lot of time, but now we're having this became a mainstream thing. As it became mainstream, more people use it, and things will grow. I love that really big table. That's pretty much how it was when it started. How many security features we have there. You can see almost nothing, right? And then in the middle of the 17 to 18, you start to have more features. Community start to talk. People start to find CVs. And right now, we have this really big amount of stuff that Kubernetes gives you for free. Cool. I will talk about the most smart person that I know, and he will hate that joke. We got this really lovely talk in KubeCon that's called I Will Let Myself In, from Ian Smart and Andy. And he talks a lot about privilege escalation in Kubernetes. Do you remember privilege escalation, the numbers on the CVs? And it's quite nice, because everything that he says is so basic. And this talk was amazing in Kubernetes, because people are like, that's amazing, I never thought about that. But why? Because we never think about security. We never talk about how things can go wrong. Cool, so you're saying to me that if I put everything in place, I will fight with my manager, I will stop everything, I'm gonna have all the security things in place. And I really love the most important side of this talk. It's not that, because I love others, this is another slide, but really is that one here. If you trade security for usability, people will destroy your security. I love the idea of developer experience. I love the idea of platform engineering. But you start to think how this becomes social, how this became a discussion about how you can give away on one side, how I can give away on the other, and we find the common ground. So if you try to put everything in security without thinking the use case, we will not be able to help. And there's this lovely talk in KubeCon in Salt Lake in 5 weeks, if I'm not wrong. It's pretty much, if you think about what people expect about compliance, what people expect about some things, it's impossible as a software, right? Because it's impossible to do everything perfect in every single side. There's a lot of things happening. There's C groups from security, there's books coming, this kind of conference, there's CTF. So this talk is to be out for the community. I don't think that in 10 years we will be able to evolve that much without people putting their time and the effort to evolve security. And that's why I say that security is harder than you think. Thank you so much. And as my mom don't understand English, I'm gonna say to her that everybody loved my talk. Oh, that's so great. Thank you so much.
What an amazing amount of energy at this end of the conference. Really feeling better. The future is very bright.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your talk. Are there any questions? You said that you were going to be here until the end, if there are.
If
are you going to KubeCon?
Questions, sorry?
Are you going to be there in KubeCon?
No, I will try to go to KubeCon London next year because it will be cheaper.
That's true from, I think, generally, actually, in this case. Yeah. In this case, let's thank Mart again. Big round of applause for our last speaker today.
Thank you so much.